So I wanted to start out on the word tabulation with just understanding what did we do. We pulled together from about 600 people who responded, 247 people gave us names, and of them we got about 4,320 actual word phrases, which summarized down to about 2,153, and we're going to show some of this. So on average, people gave about 17 phrases per response, and the most was 199. Now, from a phrase occurrence, the word gift happened a lot. I will tell you the word gift. So that was in the 20 or over category. Take from Peter to pay Paul didn't come up very much, and that was like a unique phrase. But you can get a sense of the unique to 20 and over, and there were very few 20 and over. So, maybe those 11 could be like your first list to work with. So again, just from a length of letters, just how many letters are in each phrase, the max was 75, the min was 2, and the average was about 10. So, and that's about average for all words. So let's kind of jump into Excel. So now in Excel, over here is a file that we gave out to everybody, and you should have, and or you could download from the links that we're going to be sending you in the slides. But with that, we have kind of everybody's response, and we have the user, the date they put it in, and obviously we don't have who it is, but then whoever gave us a type, like if these are the FCPA words, these are the financial statement words, we kind of stayed true to that coding, and came up with a bunch. Now we have a lot of unknowns, because people didn't give it, but we did summarize those responses. Again, this is the 247 that we got. So over here you can kind of see by user, you could see kind of the list of how many each user, this one gave 193, this one gave one word, but again, that's kind of our averaging. Now what I found interesting is in putting it together, I just wanted to note we used an ACL script, and what I did was I figured out, for those that are really into this stuff, that in taking the SurveyMonkey form data, I could kind of split it up. And if anyone wants this, feel free to email me and I could send it to you. And what it did was it took the word list, which sometimes had 199 words, sometimes had a lot less. We then broke it up, and I actually split it to 200 words because I knew we had 199 in the list. So this is kind of how we built it, and let me just kind of bring that back. And then this was the actual data file that we sent out and provided. Now, when we summarize it by word and phrase, just to kind of now bring it down to that level versus it being by user, we're now looking at it by phrase. As I said, there were about 2,000, 2153 or so unique phrases that were in the list, and the ones that happened 20 or more times, there were only 11 of them that occurred, and you could see the 11 up there, so that's that list here. So these are the top words, and something to consider without going through all the statistics, and we'll show this in a minute how to make this, but this was the Wordle, they call it Wordle, W-O-R-D-L-E, of the keywords, and you can kind of see some of the larger words showing up versus some of the ones that aren't showing up as much. So now let's take a look over on the left-hand side where we have the words, and I'm going to focus in on these first letters. And the first letter was set up by a left function, and that allows us then to sort and summarize on the first letters, which is down here. That is a pivot table of all of our words based on the first letter. And if you can believe this, there is a letter law out there as to how many words we use that start with the letter A versus B and C, and people track this. They do so that they can understand why are your words off of the benchmark itself. And so what I've done here is I've summarized a list of dictionary words on the left hand side, and there's 118,000 of those, and people could argue, is that dictionary good enough? Should you get more? Over here on the right-hand side, you can kind of see the percentages of each letter in the dictionary. And you can notice, if you just kind of eyeball down, not going to spend a lot of time on it, they're really close. So I actually downloaded 2 dictionaries to show this to you, and you can kind of see that the difference is almost hard to see. So going back to this dictionary and saying, okay, if that's a dictionary, that's a benchmark, that could be percentage here, and then that creates a percentage for each letter. And then I can relate that to my occurrences. So how many times do I have words showing up versus the dictionary? And almost like how Benford's law is to numbers, you could almost see how, the letter Benford law is not too far off. I mean, it's kind of amazing that like the A, when you look at the dictionary words to key words with the red versus blue here, that you see many of these letters lining up very, very closely. Some of them, like C, F, and G, are far off, and actually the key word percentage is a lot higher. Now, down below here, I mean, without getting too much into the math, I created a percentage of the base itself. So, just kind of on the left-hand side, just to go back to this. So the letter F, let's just kind of focus in on this one. We now have a percentage difference of 4.28, but in relation to the dictionary of 3.62, what is expected? We have a 118% difference. So, in looking at things, the 3.62 for the letter F is pretty reasonable because the average for all letters is about 3.85. So, that's kind of in the range. We had 7.89, so it is almost double, and hence why we have 118%. So, without spending too much time on calculating, I just wanted to show you below here a different chart. So now looking at it as a percentage difference, where on the left hand side we have the percentage of the dictionary benchmark. So you can see here the F was basically about 120%, which is the red, whereas the blue, which is just the raw percentage difference, was off by about 4%. So again, raw percentage in this case is 4%. It's not too bad, it sounds like, but it is about 120% of the average. Now, looking at the letter C, though, even though it is a 3 or 4% difference, the actual percentage of that isn't too much, and that's down below here where you see that at 36%. Overall, what I try to do here again is focus in on the letters that are happening the most and showing kind of high percentages. And you can notice everything hovers within about the negative to positive 50%, with a few letters going over, which are C, F, and G. What I did was then filter on the C, F, and G letters, which I did here, came back here and just said C, F, and G, filtered that, and brought that over to a list here. That I then summarized or pivot tabled into this list here, and now this gives us a list of the top words and why auditors are using so many of these C, G, and F words. I guess we're stressed or something. So we have words like fraud and facilitation and facilitate and failed investment, etc. That's why that's driving it. Now, why is this important? I think one is it's good to have a benchmark to go against, and the dictionary does provide one. And that allows you to understand where you may be off from actual benchmark of words being used. And that's interesting because words that are showing up a lot in that list would be ones that you'd want to look at, but also see, is it reasonable for your company? So take a look at this. Hopefully these charts and analysis help you in understanding more about letter and textual analysis. And now over to Steve to talk a little bit more about the words and how he put them together to use them in a search.
We wanted to give you a list of the top words collected, and here's a sample of them. We came in with gifts and gifts, having a total hits of 73 contributions from our survey respondents. What we did with these is we are categorizing the top 350 words, and our methodology was to categorize the word list to annotate the kind of frauds these words would relate to. We wanted it to be at least 3 as a crowd. If we had 3 or more respondents who contributed to the survey, we would utilize the word and categorize it. Not that the other words are not correct or not legitimate words to use in your fraud detection, but we just wanted to get a nice cross-section. Of the categorizations, we've shown you earlier the fraud triangle, where we've categorized them as pressure, opportunity, or rationalization. We also are categorizing them by financial statement type, whether they relate to the balance sheet or the P&L, as well as the expense type. Are they revenue types of words? Are they capital expenditures? Are they travel and expense report type words? Or could they even be inventory related? Some of the most interesting balance sheet and income statement words would be adjust or adjustment. The cookie jar. A good controller makes their numbers in good times and then puts a little away for the bad times. So they have a cookie jar, which is also fictitious accounting and fudging the numbers. On the income statement, we have our classic net to zero, accelerate earnings. That would be a revenue type. We want to make sure the salespeople get their bonuses, manage the earnings, and make the sales quota. Clean it up. We also had an area where we had a grouping of the creates, the knows, the overs, the nots, and the creative accounting. So, we had people who, the nots, do not care, do not say, do not use, and do not volunteer. We have the create an amount, create an earnings, create a number, create a figure. Then we had out of. We're out of here, out of this, or need to get out of the country. I wonder what kind of fraud that involved. And people who are over their jobs because they'll override, overrule, overrun, or overstate things. One area that's a practical application is to utilize some of these initial upfront statements such as do not or out of, and then use a wildcard search in order to see what you come up with. However, keep in mind that simply because the word override is involved, or create the amount, or out of compliance, none of these words by themselves, or the phrases, indicate that the journal entry or the transaction is fraudulent. It simply could be that the accountant is putting the description into the journal saying that this will keep from being out of compliance. So in these situations, the words are indicative of potential high-risk areas, not necessarily in and of themselves indicate that a fraud has taken place. And then finally, one of my favorite areas was the travel and expense report areas, where these people are doing some funny things on business trips, expensing items related to all the sin activities, I guess. No, I think those are out of most corporate policies for being allowed. And then finally, some other thoughts and takeaways. Use this list of keywords as a basis to start and match against your population for testing. Just because you have a match doesn't mean that you have a fraud committed. It's just a red flag, and that item should be scored higher. Look for negative words, such as do not, don't. These are indicators that people aren't happy with what's going on, or they want to hide something. Foul language and curse words, which have no place in any business environment. Action words which are not business related, such as move the account. Suspicious activity in the wrong accounts. If you have a petty cash account and it's an impressed account, there should never be any activity in those accounts, let alone suspicious words. And words that make no sense for your industry. Unless you're in the produce industry, seeing words like bananas or coconuts in a description of an account makes no sense at all.